Um, welcome, welcome. So glad you're here. We have got an amazing call for you tonight. So I am going to go ahead and get started. And it's interesting. There we go. I'm Andrea Miller, and I'm joining you tonight, not in my normal role as Center for Common Ground, but I'm joining you in my 501c4 role as president of the National Women's Political Caucus of Virginia. And what we do at the National Women's Political Caucus of Virginia is we endorse women to run for public office. So tonight, you are joining us for the second session of Rally for Virginia, the Road to Richmond. Now, we are a national group. We are pro-choice. We are multi-partisan, and we are a grassroots membership organization dedicated to identifying, and we've identified 28 recruiting, training, and supporting women candidates for elected and appointed office. And so thank you all so very much for joining us tonight. Our goal and our mission is to increase women's participation in the political process, increase the number of women in elected and appointed positions, support candidates who support women, and when the legislature is in session and we're not in election mode, draft legislation that centers on equality and the needs of women. Now, Virginia is readying itself for a primary election, which will be held on June 20th. Because state elections in Virginia are held in odd-numbered years, our entire Virginia General Assembly is going to be up. All 100 seats in the Virginia House and all 40 seats in the Virginia Senate. And as you can see by the chart that's on the screen, in the House, we are currently 5 seats down. And in the Senate, we have a very narrow 4-vote majority. Now, in Virginia, after redistricting, there are 37 districts that are solidly Republican. There are 31 districts, and when you look at the map, you can see in Northern Virginia, that little blue dot is Roanoke, and then you can see in Central Virginia and in Hampton Roads, the Democratic districts. There are 32 new districts that are up for grabs. So whatever candidate does the best work, we have an opportunity to get those districts. Now, Virginia is important because if you've been following what's going on in North Carolina and South Carolina, you know that Virginia is the last Southern state standing where abortion is still safe and legal. And we are going to have to ensure that we keep it that way. We have a slate of 23 endorsed candidates, and a number of them are here tonight. Katie Gooch from Senate District 14. Russet Perry has sent a video from Senate District 31. Heidi Droshak from Senate District 35 will be joining us. We also have a slate of endorsed candidates in the House. Susanna Gibson from House District 57 and Ray Cousins from House District 79 are here with us tonight. Now, here's the schedule for the primary. Many of you already have postcards. There is still an opportunity to get addresses. Your mail by date, if you are out of state, is June 5th. If you are in state, we've extended it to June 10th. We do phone bank training every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. and every Saturday at, that was interesting, and every Saturday at 1 p.m. We have sent 269,000 text messages, and those text messages have gone out on behalf of 10 of our 15 endorsed candidates who have primary elections. Early voting will end on Saturday, June 17th. And we simply have images of our senators who have primaries. Many people already know who they are. And there is a link that we will be sharing in the chat where you can go to our endorsements page and you can spend more time there. And here are the images from our endorsements page of our House candidates. And again, many of them or some of them were here on April 30th, and we have a group that is with us today. Now, we have seen really good response to our turnout efforts. The original 3 districts where we've been working, the turnout has been excellent. Remember, Virginia has 45 days of early voting. So even though the primary is near the end of June, we started voting at the beginning of May. So we are pleased with the turnout statistics. Everyone will get a copy of this presentation, so you will be able to study it. Our House districts are, of course, considerably smaller than our Senate districts. And again, where the House and the Senate districts overlapped, that helped with the turnout. We are hoping to resume texting for the House candidates. So we have a mobilized link where you can sign up and you will be able to join a national guided phone bank. Our phone banks are open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. until 8 p.m. Now, on our 501c3 side, Center for Common Ground, where we originally started making calls, we've made 27,000 calls. On our C4 side, as you can see, we have made substantially less calls. The difference is we have a budget on our C3 side for our paid phone bankers. On our C4 side, all of our phone bankers are volunteers. So we really, really, really are going to be looking for people to join us as volunteers on our C4 side or as donors so that we can bring our paid phone bankers over so they can make calls. We are also getting ready to begin door knocking, and we've already started knocking doors in Chesapeake. We've tried a couple in Charlottesville, and we have plans in Petersburg as well. we are postcarding through our partner, Postcards for Virginia. And they have addresses for you. And you can reach out to postcardsforva.com, and they will be happy to get you addresses and scripts. You will need to order your postcards. Center for Common Ground postcards cannot be used for C4 work. So all the information for purchasing postcards is on our website at nwpc-va.webflow.io/postcard. And all those links I will be dropping in the chat. Now, we did build this as a fundraiser. And so National Women's Political Caucus, we would like to be able to resume texting for the primary. I have committed $8,000 of my personal funds so that I am paying for the original 269,000 texts that we have sent. We also, in using our phone banks, have a browser dialer so that people don't need to use their own phone numbers. We want to be able to use that browser dialer. And we'd also love to be able to bring the paid phone bank team over to the 501c4 side, because we really need to lean in this primary election. So thank you all very, very much. I am thrilled and delighted to introduce our next very, very special guest, Heather Booth. Not only is Heather a very dear friend, I have had the honor of organizing with Heather. So Heather, the floor is yours.
If we organize, we can change the world. When we've organized in the past, we have changed the world, even when things seemed most challenging. And we can do that now. Andrea Miller certainly knows that. I met her, I don't know, I'm going to say 15 years ago, and she was the crackerjack of the group. She did everything that you could possibly think of doing to make the events, to make the organizing, to make the outreach a success, sending our message, recruiting members, raising the funds, and winning on the issues and the elections. That's what you all do tonight. I thank all of you who are on there, over 100 people on this Zoom call, and these extraordinary candidates of Heidi, Katie, Ray, Susanna, and others that we may hear from a little later. You are a remarkable group, and we need you. Now, I'm not in Virginia, but we need you for Virginia and for the rest of the country, because we are now on a knife's edge between freedom and between authoritarian rule, and is particularly focused around reproductive freedom, though it's also other freedoms, the freedom to vote, the freedom to thrive. On reproductive freedom, it's the most intimate decision we make in our lives about when or whether or with whom we have a child. And the MAGA folks are after this to limit us. But if we organize, we can push this back and we can reassert our freedom. I'll tell you my own history. There's some who are younger and may not remember life before Roe v. Wade. I certainly do. I had just been involved in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. 1964, I was in Mississippi in the Freedom Summer Project. Many of you may have heard about that, where it gained notoriety when Northern students came down to help very courageous African Americans in Mississippi who were struggling for the right to vote, for the freedom to vote. And 3 of the young volunteers, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner, were killed at the hands of the Klan. But within a year, we won a Voting Rights Act because people organized. Now I returned to my campus, and a friend of mine had been raped at knife point in her bed in off-campus housing. We went with her to student health to get a gynecological exam, and she was given a lecture on her promiscuity and told that student health didn't cover gynecological exams. That's what life was like in an era before we had a strong women's movement, a strong political movement that fought for freedom for us all. Before Roe, there were septic abortion wards where women who had either done injury to themselves because they weren't prepared to have a child, or someone had done injury to them. They often went, some were quite ill, and some died. And we will face this again because of this pushback on Roe and on this most intimate freedom of our lives. In 1965, a friend of mine mentioned to me that his sister was pregnant, not ready to have a child, and could I help her find someone to provide an abortion? I had never thought about the issue before, and 3 people talking about preparing for an abortion was a conspiracy to commit a felony. I don't think I quite knew it at the point, but I said I'd do what I could to help. I went and found a doctor, an extraordinary doctor, T.R.M. Howard, we should know his name. And he, I didn't know it at the time, had been a courageous civil rights leader in Mississippi until his name appeared on a Klan death list. And he came to Chicago, where I was in school. He performed the abortion, and I thought I had done one good deed, and that was it. But word spread, and someone else called. I made the arrangement again with Dr. Howard, and then word spread, and someone else called. And I realized as an organizer, I had to set up a system. Because it wasn't legal, rather than saying a name and a phone number, we said, pregnant don't want to be, and we called the system Jane. Over time, I recruited over 100 women to be part of what became called Jane, or the service. And the women of Jane learned how to do the procedures and themselves did over 11,000 abortions before Roe. There's much more to the story. There's an Academy Award nominated film on the short list called The Janes. There's another movie with Sigourney Weaver called Call Jane. And there's much more to the story, plays and other shows about it. But you are the people who are making the history now. Better than a play, better than a movie, better than the story. You are making the history now. You are saving lives on this most intimate freedom, on reproductive freedom, on the freedom to vote, on the freedom to thrive, on the freedom to have a democracy. And so I thank those candidates who are on the call. I thank all of you who'll do the work, who'll write the postcards, who'll do the texts, who'll do the calls, who'll go door to door. It's doing the work that will make the difference. Thank you for your, I say the 4 M's. Thank you for recruiting the members. Thank you for sending out the message. Thank you for raising the money. And thank you for showing up in the movement. When you organize, you'll change this world. Thank you all.
Thank you so very much, Heather. And now I want to bring up our first candidate. Heidi is an extraordinary candidate. She shows the dedication that we women put into everything that we do. So Heidi, introduce yourself and let's talk about your run for office. And you saw that little baby.
I thought I still had one more candidate ahead of me, so I was just finishing nursing. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Heather, for the inspiring words and a reminder of why we're all here. My name is Heidi Droshak. I am running in the newly redrawn 35th District, which is a state Senate district up here in Northern Virginia. For those of you that might be familiar with the area, it covers Springfield, West Springfield, Annandale, and pretty much everything from the southern border of Fairfax City out to Alexandria. I live right in the center of the district in Springfield with my husband, our pets, and the special guest who just made an appearance, my son Atlas, who was born 4 weeks ago. So we are still handling a newborn at home and getting back out on the campaign trail. But it's been quite fabulous. And fortunately, he's been knocking doors with us and being a good sport about it. A little bit about myself. For those of you that don't know me, I started my career in politics on the federal side about 10 years ago, working for the Obama White House. I came to Virginia to attend the University of Richmond, where I got my law degree and my MBA. I then got involved in state politics about 7 years ago, where I started advocating for education, environmental, and healthcare policy, and started my own nonprofit that I ran for 5 years. I am now a small business owner with my husband and spend my free time advocating for good governance with an organization called Big Money Out Virginia, because time and time again, I saw in my work and in the work of many, many advocates, probably many of you, how our system, which is unfortunately, especially here in Virginia, at times overridden with corporate money, prioritizes the needs of corporate and special interests above everyday Virginians. And so I think so many of the issues that we're talking about, reproductive rights, guns, the environment, healthcare, are what everyday Virginians expect us to go to Virginia and make a difference on. But that is sometimes very, very difficult when we have millions of corporate dollars flooding into our system. And so I am one of many, fortunately now, candidates not taking any corporate contributions, although I am the only one in my race, but fortunately one of many across the state, and very proud about that because this is personal. My son will grow up in this community. He will attend these schools. He will play in the rivers and streams of this district. He will probably get his first job here. And so I want to make sure that we are building a community and a commonwealth that he can be proud to be raised in and that I can be proud to raise him in. And I've said over and over again, and more so recently, I think having a slate of at times angry moms, but moms in general is almost a guaranteed way to make sure that we see progress here in Virginia. And there are so many issues, like Heather said, we are on some issues, unfortunately, right on a knife's edge. And there are many issues that we can see a lot more progress on. And so I am extremely excited to be part of that conversation and hopefully part of that fight. And so very, very grateful to have that you're having me here today, and very appreciative of so many people out and on an evening. I will say one thing that's been so heartwarming about this whole process is seeing how many people are involved in the process and fighting the good fight. And so however you're coming into the process, I'm very grateful for all of you. And so thank you very much for the time. And if anybody has any questions, I'll also, I think I can drop things in the chat. I'll drop my personal information. So you can also reach out to me personally with questions, comments, anything, and I would love to hear from you.
Thank you so very much, Heidi. Thank you for joining us, taking time away from, I didn't really get to see him, but I know your son just must be absolutely adorable. So thank you. And I'm going to do a very quick reference to what Heather said, what Heidi repeated. Virginia really and truly is on a knife's edge. As many of you know, our governor is basically preparing to run for president, and he's going to have an interesting narrative. His narrative right now is he's the new Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan turned California a blue state. It elected him, a Republican, as governor, and then he got elected president. It is very, very important that in Virginia, we make sure to hand a resounding defeat at all levels. We must take back the Virginia House. So Heidi, thank you very much for running. And we must get a margin in the Virginia Senate. And people have asked, why are you endorsing women over some of the men that are already in the district? And the answer is because the men haven't been willing to do the job. The men have been willing to trade women's issues for better committee positions, for docketing and votes for their legislation. And we cannot afford that anymore. So there is no room in the Virginia legislature for pro-life Democrats, or Democrats who are really Republicans and they just run as Democrats, or for men who are willing to trade women's issues just so that they can maintain regional control of a committee. We're done with that. Our next speaker hails from the city of Richmond, and she's actually a minister. So I want to bring up Reverend Katie Gooch, who is running against one of those men.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much for this time. I want to say my heart was warmed being able to see Heidi. It's been really great to share passion around campaign finance reform, but also what it's like to be a mother of a young child. So I have a 7-month-old. I have 2 other children as well, but we both have been able to knock on doors with babies in hand, and it's been an exciting time. I want to say a huge thank you at first to everyone on this call who has done text messages and all these other various things. I can't tell you how exciting it was the very first time I knocked on a door and somebody said to me, "Oh, I just read about you." And I was like, "Where did you read about me?" And they said, "Well, I got a text message about you. And then I was talking to someone about you." And it just, that has happened time and time and time again. It makes such a difference that introduction has already happened, and I receive a warm welcome when I'm on the doors. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all. I know it's not just text messages, many other things that you do, but it really incredibly makes a difference on the ground. So thank you. As Andrea said, I am a pastor with the United Methodist Church. I also am very involved with college students here at VCU and in the Richmond area. Teaching them how to engage with each other. As any of you guys that know that might have college age children, they have a really hard time connecting with each other these days, but also how to engage with their community and how to do it well. And so that's why I have a lot of connections in the city of Richmond. I've partnered with a ton of different nonprofits and boards and community groups. And so that's how I have connection all throughout this brand new district, just like Heidi and everyone else who's going to talk about. We have a brand new district, so it's very exciting opportunity. So I'm going to really quick give you a couple of reasons why I am running. So one of the biggest reasons I'm running is childcare is a major issue in the state of Virginia. It's an issue all over the United States, but the state of Virginia is 40th in the nation when it comes to accessibility to childcare. That is an issue that is critical for our education system, right? It's the very first hurdle that we have to get over in our education system. I'm going to use my knowledge as a woman who has 3 young children, but also as the chair of my children's daycare, and that got us through COVID. I had someone at a fundraiser say to me the other day, "You know what, Katie, you just need to stand up and say, you got the daycare through COVID, and sit back down, and we all understand what you've been through," right? So I can bring that energy that I did, that I brought community members together and parents together and families together and teachers together, and we got through COVID. We can get through this crisis, this childcare crisis that we have in Virginia. So that's the sort of one reason that I am running, is to bring that perspective. Another reason I'm running is to bring the perspective of poverty alleviation. I have been on the ground. I have walked hand in hand with a woman with a housing voucher in her hand and a toddler on the other side, and going door to door asking if any landlord would take her, and they wouldn't. And, you know, we have legislation that we write all the time, and we think that it's going to do great things. But if we haven't talked to the people that it impacts, if we haven't talked to the nonprofits that are working with those groups, they don't do well. And I can't tell you I know every answer to our housing crisis, our food insecurity crisis, but I know dozens of food pantries that I have worked with that feed thousands of people every week. I know people who are dealing with housing insecurity, and people who have gone through housing insecurity on their own. Those are the folks that I'm going to connect with. And so I'm running so that voice can be in the state of Virginia General Assembly. Another reason I'm running, going back to being a woman. When we are talking about women and women's choice, it's essential to understand how a woman's body works, right? It's essential to understand all the complexities. And as a pastor, as Andrea spoke earlier, I have unfortunately, incredible experience with many women who have gone through these issues of fertility and various other things. And I can talk to folks across the aisle and talk to them and explain to them why some of these drastic measures just don't make sense from a whole lot of points of view. And so that's one reason that I'm running, is to bring that perspective. Another reason that I'm running is for the last decade, I have worked really hard to try to promote more paid family sick leave in Virginia. And we hear over and over and over, well, it can't be done for these small businesses. I am the director of a nonprofit, and I have 3 employees, and they all have full health care. They all have paid family sick leave. When I was currently the head of my kids' daycare board that has 35 employees, they all have paid family sick leave. I am in charge of a committee that has 3,000 Methodist pastors throughout the state of Virginia. I'm on the executive committee that makes sure that they have healthcare and they have paid family sick leave. So I can sit at a table and talk to people from small businesses and say, this can be done. Let's figure out how to do it. There are so many other reasons that I'm running for this office. I'm excited. Campaign finance is a huge part of it. The growth of Richmond is insane, and we have to be smart about how we grow. There's so many different things that I want to do. I will say, if I do get the opportunity to represent Richmond, I will be in the footsteps of a woman who just went to Congress, Jennifer McClellan. She's a great woman, and she has small children who were in my children's daycare. And she brought that perspective. And I think it's really important to keep that perspective going. And last but not least, I'm running because there will be a lot of new faces in the state Senate of Virginia. This redistricting, there is chaos. And you know what? I do really well in chaos. I work with college students, and they're from all over the place, right? I work with people that are doing social work and all kinds of services throughout the state of Virginia or throughout Richmond. I love chaos, and I love to connect with people and new people and see where passion is going and how we can go forward with it. And so I just want to say that I will not take for granted the opportunity to represent my folks. And somebody says sometimes there's an old saying, if you want to get something done, give it to someone who's busy. And every woman that you're going to hear from tonight is a busy woman, right? They have other things that they could be doing, but this is what they are doing. And we will not take for granted the opportunity to serve our folks, and not just to sit back and get a plush committee assignment, but instead to really get the work done. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. So again, if you were not inspired by that, I don't think you're breathing. We're going to stay right in the city of Richmond for another minute. And I want to bring up Ray Cousins, who is also running in the city of Richmond. So Ray, welcome, and tell us why you're running and your story.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, NWPC Virginia, for your support of my campaign and for your endorsement. Again, my name is Ray Cousins. I am running for the House of Delegates to represent the newly redrawn 79th District, which is located in Richmond. I am a 4th generation Richmonder. I'm also a working mom. I have an almost 2-year-old. who is just finding her voice. So a lot of screaming these days. And I'm also an attorney. My desire to run for office is rooted in my upbringing. I come from a very long line of domestic workers, nurses, educators, postal workers, factory workers, and carpenters. Just everyday working people who lived and worked here in the city of Richmond for the last 100 years. I am very passionate about Richmond and Virginia. I cannot think of a better place to raise my daughter. And so I am running to uplift working families, everyday working people like mine, and to ensure a better Virginia for my daughter and for all kids. When I think about the examples of strong women that I've had in my life growing up, my grandmother worked as a nurse at a local hospital here. She also completed her GED, which was a dream of hers, at the age of, she was in her 50s when she did that. A couple of my aunts worked at local factories here. Another faction of my aunts worked at the telephone company, which I know to this day, I still don't know what telephone company it was, but they worked at the telephone company. So I just saw, strong examples of women just, working really hard and also providing for their families. And so I certainly understand that we are not only the backbone of our households, but the backbone of our economy as well. My childhood experience was one of public service, civil rights, and social justice. So my mother is a retired Richmond public school teacher. She taught for 35 years at an elementary school here. My father he had a long career in workforce development and did some affordable housing advocacy work here in Richmond back in the 80s and 90s. And I just remember very lively, passionate discussions about civil rights and social justice as I was growing up. And that's what inspired me to become an attorney. So I completed my law school studies at Howard University School of Law. It was very important for me to attend Howard, and I chose that school because of its commitment to social justice, civil rights, and graduating and producing social engineers for change. I moved back home after I completed law school, knowing that I wanted to make a difference in my community. And so in my day job, I ensure that people who are harmed by pharmaceutical drugs, environmental disasters, and also medical devices get the compensation that they need to rebuild their lives. I also have volunteered for a few community organizations here in the city that serve underserved populations and provide resources, particularly in childhood education and the arts. In my pro bono work, I have represented a number of tenants who were facing eviction, like a lot of our families here in Richmond and across Virginia are facing. One in particular, a single mother who was a neighbor of mine and had to make a decision about whether to pay her exorbitant light bill or her rent. And she decided to pay her light bill because she had a small child. And that is a decision that too many of our families here face. I got my start in politics volunteering for President Obama's campaign, doing voter registration and voter protection work. And also restoration of rights for individuals returning from incarceration. And I became very passionate about that work, and most recently was responsible for voter registration and voter protection for the Richmond City Democratic Committee. When I think about, a better Richmond, I sort of have always imagined what a better Richmond or a better Virginia is. And it's a place where every child has access to a good quality education, where teachers get the compensation that they deserve for the jobs that they do, where everyone has access to a living wage, to paid family and medical leave, where every community has access to equitable and affordable healthcare, fresh, affordable, healthy foods, urban green space and tree canopy, which is an issue across the Commonwealth, and also where our streets, our churches, our mosques, our synagogues, our schools are free from gun violence. A better Virginia is also a place where my daughter can grow up knowing the full history of the United States of America and not just some whitewashed version of it, where our voting rights are protected and not suppressed. It's a place where everyone can love freely and identify as who they are. And it's also a place where our reproductive and contraceptive freedoms are protected. Abortion rights are under attack across the nation, particularly in the South. It is imperative that we fight to protect the right to a safe, legal abortion here in Virginia. I have never backed down from an opponent, no matter how powerful or well-funded, and that is the energy that I will take to the House of Delegates. Thank you again for having me tonight. I really appreciate this opportunity.
And thank you very, very much, Ray. Thank you so much for running. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your energy. And everybody, aren't our candidates incredible? Aren't they wonderful? I know I went out of order. We've got a very, very, very short video. Going to go back to Northern Virginia. Russ Perry wasn't able to join us tonight, but she did send a very, very short video. So Josie, if you will bring up that video, please. And Josie's
Hang on.
like,
Yeah, I might need a moment. Should we get Suzanne up first? I just
oh, well,
appeared
let's
for me.
bring Susanna up. All right. Well, we're going to head back to the Richmond area then. We were doing so well down there. And we're going to bring up our next candidate, Susanna Gibson, who is running in the Henrico area, which is literally right next to the city of Richmond. So welcome, Susanna.
Thank you. Yes, it is literally right next to the city of Richmond. I was in this city just a few minutes ago recording a voiceover for my TV ad. For those of you who don't know me, I am Susanna Gibson. I'm a nurse practitioner here in the Richmond area. I've worked in the greater Richmond area for the past 15 years or so. And I have 2 children. And you can probably hear them in the background being wild. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. Yep, there they go again. I am running for the House of Delegates in the new 57th district in Western Henrico County. So this is a district that previously had been very heavily gerrymandered Republican. But with Virginia's recent redistricting, it moved 20 points Democratic, which is a huge jump. And it is pulled from 3 current delegates districts, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. It's considered the Republican delegates old district. He has gotten redistricted out. It's an open seat, and it is a true 50-50 district with a 79 vote difference in the recent midterm elections. If you look at the precincts that make up this district, 79 votes. That's how important this and close this district is. So as a nurse practitioner, you know, honestly, you guys can probably already assume why I'm running, but I've always been a very passionate reproductive rights, women's rights advocate going back to when I was a teenager. And when the Dobbs decision came out last summer, I decided I was going to do something about it. I am the daughter of a woman who worked for Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, and she worked on George McGovern's campaign and was chairman of the Charlottesville City School Board forever. So strong women in politics is in my blood and something I've grown up around. But as many of you know, because I do get a lot of questions, well, what have you been doing before? Well, first of all, I was trying to take a shower with a 7 and 9-year-old and working. So I worked as the lead nurse practitioner for the VCU Division of Geriatrics for the better part of a decade and did a lot of work with complex care clinic and geri clinic, but predominantly saw patients in the home-based primary care program where I was these patients' primary care provider, but I would go to their homes. So these are complex adult and geriatric patients who are unable to leave their homes because of significant difficulties. So patients with ALS, patients with MS, patients with spinal stenosis or severe rheumatoid arthritis, home vent patients. And it is, I will say, it was a blessing for me in so many ways. It made me grateful for everything I had every single day. But it also made me a really strong advocate for people, especially people who don't have other people to advocate for them. When you go in people's homes, like I was not just their PCP, I was a social worker and a nurse and a friend and a family member. And I got to really understand the complexities and real issues that people face in a way that I feel very blessed to have been able to be a part of and help solve. I got them heat for their homes, food to eat, electricity turned back on, medications, $4 medications that they needed but couldn't afford until they get their check the next week. These are real issues that are going on in and out of Virginia, and in and out of Richmond and Henrico. So I know our district and I know it well. I know the complex state and local resources to be able to get these patients what they need. But when the Dobbs decision came out, I said, over my dead body, is that going to happen in Virginia to my daughter, my son, my neighbor, any single person in Virginia? I refuse. And my two best friends since I was 10 years old have always told me I should run for office. And I was talking to them and they said, as we've told you before, what you really need to do is run for office. And I looked at this district and I realized that it's absolutely winnable and flippable with the right Democratic candidate. It is a tough district and it is going to need a ton of support from people all over the country. I try and call and gather support. I have supporters in Washington State and Oregon and California because people understand that Virginia really is at a tipping point and reproductive rights are under attack. And we need a healthcare provider who knows what they are talking about in detail in that Virginia General Assembly to push back and speak eloquently about these issues in a way that, I think that I am the best person to do and I am the right person to do it. But I need your help. I need everybody's help. It's tough. It is a 50-50 district, but again, I can win it. Truly healthcare. I have healthcare policy experience. I was the lead on a CMS demonstration project called Independence at Home. I worked with Virginia Medicaid and Virginia Premier Insurance as the clinical lead to essentially build from the ground up the Center for Advanced Health Management. And I understand how every single issue really does come back to health and healthcare. Environmental justice is also reproductive justice. They intersect, they're intertwined. Gun violence is a public health crisis. To keep our public education in our schools, like we need robust public health policy. Everything comes back to health, transportation, infrastructure, and I know those intimately. And I promise to make every single person on this call proud. I am aggressively going after protective reproductive rights. Loudly, proudly, it's my number one issue. It has been since before the midterms, even when all of the men told me, don't make it your number one, it's a losing issue. I said, you're wrong. And you need to stop underestimating women. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for letting me be here.
And we appreciate you, Susanna. Thank you so very, 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 very much. Josie, do you have that video ready for us?
This
do. Is Russet Perry. Great. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Russet Perry. I'm a Democrat running to flip the 31st State Senate seat out here in Loudoun and Fauquier counties. First of all, let me say thank you to all of you tonight for being here, for being invested, and to the National Women's Political Caucus for endorsing me and for hosting this event. A little bit about me. I grew up in an economically disadvantaged household, the daughter of a single income earning public servant. I spent my younger years, because of that, having to fight and advocate for myself. I was able to do that and went on up and graduated from ultimately one of the best law schools in the country, and now have the privilege as an attorney of advocating for those around me. In fact, I spent my career after I graduated from law school as a public servant, working as a prosecutor, prosecuting any of the crimes you probably have heard of: domestic violence, child abuse, horrific sexual assault cases, robbery, carjacking, homicide, you name it, I probably have prosecuted it. I also served over at the Central Intelligence Agency as a CIA officer. spending my days every day fighting to ensure that our freedoms and our democracy were protected from those who would attempt to harm us. As I now step into politics, a little bit about the race that I'm running in. My seat is the 21st most Democratic seat here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That means that in the state Senate, there are 40 senators. My seat is the tipping point. My seat is the point that decides whether or not Democrats hold the majority. An incredibly critical, crucial, and important race for this seat will occur this year. People talk about the blue wall in Virginia that has been the Senate that has protected against an extreme Republican agenda. That is the seat, that is this race. Because of my background, because of my experience, and because of the critical nature of this race, this year I have been endorsed by a slew of folks, including Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, former Governor Ralph Northam, State Senator Jennifer Boysko, John Bell, Barbara Favola, Scott Serval, Louise Lucas, Mamie Locke, as well as a long list of groups, not only National Women Political Caucus, but now Emily's List, Climate Cabinet, Clean Virginia, LIUNA, the list goes on. The reason folks have chosen to weigh in on this race is because of the critical nature and critical importance of this race. If we lose this seat, we may well lose access to some of the things that Democrats have fought so hard for over the past couple of years, and some of the things that we have relied on for protection for even longer. So things like access to abortion, things like access to reproductive health care will run through this seat, will run through Loudoun County this year. Things like the red flag laws, common sense gun safety laws, they run through this seat, they run through this race. Our progress on environmental regulations, again, on the edge, on the verge in this seat, on this blue brick. The reason I'm running in this race, to be fair, is not so much for me. My career as a prosecutor, I spent many days, most days actually sitting across the table from folks, talking to them as they struggled through some of the most difficult times in their life, some of the most pressing issues that are facing our country today, are facing folks in our country today. In my own personal background, my own personal struggles growing up, I'm familiar with many of those same issues myself. So I was asked to step up and run in this race, to run in this critical race. And so I would ask each one of you to consider tonight, as you're trying to decide whether you should give money or where to give money, to consider giving in this race, to consider giving for the critical nature of this particular seat, to protect things like abortion rights, to protect things like gun safety, protect things like our environment, to protect from the onslaught that's hit our public education, but to not just do it for you, because I'm running. The things that I see, the things that I think about are the folks that I have looked in their faces. And I couldn't say no when asked. I would ask you not to say no either. Please consider giving tonight. Give for yourself. Give for them. Give for folks who can't give. Give for your children. Give for the people around you that you care about. And give for Commonwealth, for our democracy, for our freedoms, and for our country. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So again, yes, yay, Russ. Every single one of these candidates is obviously a fighter. Every single one of these candidates has stressed it's all about us. It's all about their constituents. Not one is running and making it's all about me. These are the kind of candidates we want to send to the Virginia General Assembly. So again, why is this so important? Because we need to win 5 seats and take back the Virginia House. And you have met some of the candidates that we believe can do that. Yes, Eileen, servant leaders. Women understand that we serve others. And in that way, we serve ourselves. We are always working to ensure that everybody around us is going to be okay. The other thing is we must make sure we have real people in the Senate who understand how important our abortion rights are, who will fight not only for our abortion rights, but will also fight for our voting rights, will fight for education equity, health equity, housing equity. Yes, there are many, 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 many problems in Virginia, and we need people willing to fight for the solution. So thank you all so very much. And again, my internet is going wild over here. So Josie, if you would be kind enough, because my computer is having a moment, if you would be kind enough to drop the NWPC donate link in as well. We would love to continue texting for our other 5 candidates. As I said, I maxed out. I put $8,000 of my personal money in this. So we're going to need to raise money for texting. So thank you all for coming. Donate to these candidates. We must ensure that these candidates have the resources that they need to win their races. So thank you all so very, very much. And yes, it is 9 o'clock and we have finished on time. I'm going to allow, are there any questions? You can put them in the chat. Josie, read the questions because my Zoom window won't open again.
No worries. I don't see any so far. Before we close out, just so you know, all these links, all the slides, the recording, everything will be shared with you all. So don't worry, you'll get all this information so you can share the links with your friends and get everybody to support all these wonderful women running for office. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. I don't see any questions, so I think we can probably wrap
That's
up.
because our candidates were so incredibly brilliant. What was left to ask?
All righty.
Oh,
Well, then
thank
I'm
you
going
all
to
so
end
very
the
much.
call.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.